Mr. Kamen, sorry for leaving you there. Hi, you're also far away. Nature-based solutions, they get far less attention than things like wind and solar, right? Everybody knows what a wind panel looks like, or a solar panel or a wind blade looks like, even geothermal, for example. I have two parts of a question for you. First is, what are some of the impediments for their development at the moment? And then the second part of the question would be, you know, we heard before in the EV panel that Indonesia is really well placed in terms of minerals, for example, and inputs into the supply chain. It's also really well positioned in terms of nature-based solutions. Is that going to be a domestic benefit? Is that going to be something that's packaged and sold abroad? Will we see people coming in and packaging offsets, for example, as part of their oil or gas portfolio? So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for bringing up a relatively less covered topic. So before I talk about the impediments, and some of the opportunities, I'd like to share what we as investors see as opportunities in sort of nature-related investments. And when we look at that, there's essentially sort of four things that we assess. Does it create positive impact to nature? Does it create positive impact to the climate? Positive impact to communities, people in the area, and so forth? And then, of course, positive impact for our pockets as investors, right? So all of these four things have to work for these projects to be successful. And there are three specific areas that we find very attractive in Indonesia, but I think very relevant to the area because of similar climatic conditions. One is in the area of biomass production, specifically producing wood chips, wood pellets as replacement for coal in the energy industry. For heating and for power generation, where the footprint in terms of carbon is much, much lower than burning coal. We also see opportunities from biomass in producing alternative fuels, particularly from waste products like palm oil production, palme, waste cooking oil. There's ways to use that to produce fuels, particularly sustainable aviation fuel and sustainable diesel. So that's one area that I think is very relevant, and there's a lot of opportunities for success in the region. The second one is what we call agroforestry. So this is essentially working with local communities in a few key sort of ingredients or fruit or nuts, so to say, such as cocoa, coffee, and some materials for production of essential oils, such as patchouli, nutmeg, and so forth. So we see that sort of the value chain in this segment, a lot of the value historically has been concentrated in the downstream, right? And I know earlier today it was spoken about downstreaming a lot of, there's a lot of opportunities downstream in Indonesia. But this, I think, is one opportunity where you can actually upstream and create more value in the upstream, working with farmers, local communities, improving yields, actually having the opportunity to preserve some land and even do agriculture in wild forests. You can actually grow wild coffee. And these are all products that are very well received by multinational food companies that have set targets and standards and are willing to pay premium for products that are produced in a sustainable way. So we think that's another area for exciting investments. The third one is sort of what we call carbon, right? Preserving, and let me give you some numbers. Indonesia has more than 90 million hectares of forest land. About half of that is pristine forest in provinces like Papua, Aceh, Kalimantan, and so forth. There's more than 20 million hectares of peatland. That's more than 30% of the global. This is prime area, and I assume similar in countries like Malaysia and Vietnam, given the availability of forests and similar climate conditions, to look for, create, and then manage carbon capture projects, preservation projects, or restoration of peatland projects, where potentially investors can recover their investment in the form of carbon credits, right? And there is a huge opportunity in this region that we believe is exciting for us as investors. Now, impediments, financing is always an impediment and a challenge. This topic is relatively new, so a lot of people do not fully know what this is all about, right? So getting regulators educated, getting communities educated, that is an investment that's required in order to succeed in this area. And of course then support in the form of tax, more clear regulations, because it's all relatively new, right? So to us, that's the impediment. And it takes a lot of effort and dealing with multiple stakeholders to try to align to ensure that you get the project approved, or you get the right sort of framework to support it, and so forth. So these are some of the impediments. And just lastly, as I said, so I think this is not only relevant to Indonesia, where my experience is from, but I think clearly there will be opportunities in countries like Cambodia, in Laos, in Vietnam, to work with farmers and local communities, both in terms of sustainable agriculture, but also preserving peatlands and forests and so forth, and also in the biomass sector. So that's what I wanted to share to the audience today.